Hello, good evening from St. Peter's in Hove, where it's been hot and sunny. I'm Father Alexander, and I'm here to do the next step in our walking tour through the Bible. And this step will finish off the book of Exodus. Now, the book of Exodus has two very long passages, which are both really quite remote from our experience, shall we say, and they're not very particularly engaging. They are God's instructions about how to build the sanctuary and then the actual building of the sanctuary. God gives instructions about how to build a sanctuary from chapters 25 to 31, and then from chapters 35 to 39, the sanctuary is built, which is more or less a repetition of what had gone before. Now, Pope Benedict XVI made a very important point, I think, where he said that God gives the moral law on Mount Sinai, the Ten Commandments, and the moral laws that we talked about, and at the same time, he also gives the law about worship. One of the things that's most interesting, but not in a good way in recent times, is the way the liturgy and the worship of the church has been separated from the moral practice of the church, the moral law of the church. So you get people saying, oh, well, I go to Mass, but I can fundamentally dissent from the teaching of the church on the moral law. But in fact, as Pope Benedict so rightly pointed out, the liturgy and the moral law flow from the same source, God. It is God who gives us the liturgy. He is the actor in the liturgy. And it is God who gives us the moral law. And the moral law and the liturgy have a dual purpose, a single purpose, in fact, which is to bring us close to God. We become close to God through the liturgy, and we become close to God through the moral law. Now, the liturgy of the Jews took place in the sanctuary that Moses and the children of Israel carried through the desert. Then eventually that sanctuary made its home on the Mount of Zion, and eventually the temple was built on that site. The temple owes its origins to the will of God. It is God who has laid out all the rules and regulations of the temple worship. That is what these passages are telling us. In other words, the liturgy is not something that is made up by human beings. It's something that is given to us by God. It's not something that we sit down and work out with a committee. It's rather a gift we receive from God. Now, that is very, very important, the God-given nature of the liturgy. For the Jews, it was incredibly important to know that their temple was something that had been willed into existence by God. And the man and woman who worshipped at the temple worshipped in accordance with the will of God, in accordance with the invitation of God to worship in that way and that way alone. So that's why it was important for the Jews to do the things that they're commanded to do by Moses, or rather commanded to do through Moses. It was important for them to do the incense correctly and the burnt offerings correctly, because that is what God wanted. That is what God has asked of them. Take our own example, because it's also important, as Pope Benedict XVI said so rightly, our worship is in continuity with the worship of the Jewish temple, and therefore in continuity with the worship given, the rules of which are given, first of all, Mount Sinai. So Mount Sinai is the founding charter of the moral law, it's the founding charter of the liturgical law, the law of worship, and the two go together. So, for example, just to consider this, it's first of all, it's very wrong for us to see all the instructions that God gives to Moses as somehow or another nitpicking or something we can all do without nowadays. Consider, for example, if somebody were to come to us and tell us, oh, we should change the wording of the Our Father, we should, let's say, drop the phrase, give us this day our daily bread. That would be completely and unutterably unacceptable to us all. Because, as we know, the Our Father, as we Catholics call it, and our Protestant brethren call it the Lord's Prayer, is just that. It is the prayer given to us by Jesus himself. Now, I know there's no need to point out to me, no need to write in, that the Our Father exists in two different versions, and we use one version and not the other. But that is because the version we use has been hallowed by the tradition of the Church, and we cannot change that tradition. Tradition develops, tradition grows, tradition matures, but tradition does not have a change that involves a break with the past. So if somebody were to come to us and say, as from Monday, let's not use the Our Father at all, let's put that in the attic and forget about it, that'd be completely unacceptable. Just as if somebody were to come to us and say, oh, as from Monday, let's forget covet thy neighbour's wife being so wrong, let's leave that one out. No, that would be completely wrong. I talked about the Ten Commandments being complete. There's no need for an 11th. It would be really hard put to try and work out what the 11th commandment should be. And it would also be really hard put to get rid of one of the commandments, say which one is the least important. They're all important. The 10 commandments form a coherent whole. The liturgy of the church, the liturgy of worship, the act of worship has a coherence to it. To use a metaphor, it has a grammar to it. And once you start tinkering with that grammar, the language no longer makes sense. So we follow the grammar that has been given to us by God, and our liturgical language therefore makes sense. Because let's remember, the liturgy is the action of God in head and members. The other thing is this: the person who receives, both in the book of Exodus, which we're now leaving, the person who receives the law is the person who receives the liturgy. Man is a rule-keeping animal, a legal animal, one who likes to have the structure of law. Man is also one who likes to have, man and woman, likes to have the structure of worship, the structure of liturgy. God has given us these structures, and he has tailored these structures to our very human nature. So worship should come to us easily because we are made to worship. The Ten Commandments should come to us easily. Their observance should come to us easily because we are made to keep these commandments. Okay, we'll be starting at some point in the future, maybe in a not too distant future, on the book of Leviticus. That's a bit of a challenge, the book of Leviticus. See you there. Bye.